can't see that. Okay. For those of you that are watching right now, just give me a second. I'm just pulling it up on my end to see if everything's working properly. I know a lot of you guys have your AP Psych exam today. There. Oh, shoot. That ain't right. There it is. There it is. Okay. Yeah, if I remember correctly, you guys have your AP Psych exam today, so I don't expect to see a ton of you at the start of this. Give you guys time to get in there. Today is Tuesday. Psychology is happening 1 p.m. Central Time, so it's just finishing up now. Tomorrow, it's Lang, which I think is our juniors, so you guys shouldn't have anything tomorrow in midday unless you take German. Thursday is us. Okay, cool. That's good. Means after Psych, most of you guys probably don't have another exam until Thursday. Sorry, just checking everything here. Headphones off. Runus! Oh my god, you did! Ooh. Juked. Runus got her. Good job, Runus. FaceTime you to distract you? That's tough. That's tough. You know Runus well, Zai. You know he's gonna do that. Runus Bamboozle Basna. That's his name. Okay. So yeah, those of you that are watching this after the fact, yeah, Psych was easy. Yeah, I mean, Psych's exam is mostly vocab based, so I figure open note Psych exam is like a layup. Yeah, that's one where I was like, that one should be like super doable in this. Almost said something inappropriate, but I refrained. Thank you, Sai. Appreciate the restraint. So Teddy's video is going to be going through a bit more of FRQs. These will focus on aggregate demand and aggregate supply, both short run and long run. The Phillips Curve, because that's typically tied to the ADAS graph, and multipliers, the spending and tax multipliers, the ones that have to do with MPS and MPC and GDP and income and all that. So we'll be going through FRQs that cover those content areas. And then tomorrow's live stream will be over monetary policy, money market, Federal Reserve stuff, central bank stuff, loanable funds market, crowding out, and tax multiplier, the money multiplier. Those will be the big things for tomorrow. And then we're almost there. I mean, we got 2 days. So that's good. Your question was about cupcakes. What was your question? What's your question? Archer, what's up? Why are you... He's hanging me at the desk. Buddy. Give them what they want. Archer. Give the people what they want. They want Archer. How? I literally took the shedding comb through you yesterday for like 30 minutes. How is it still possible? Oh, so gross. Oh, so annoying. Okay. So hopefully you guys got my email earlier today where I sent out an email which is basically just sort of like the last bit of stuff for general AP exam information. No updates, just like, hey, in case you don't know, here's what you should be doing on the AP exam. There's a message at the very end for especially second semester kids of like my kind of, I won't say goodbye message, but if I had you like the last week of school, I would give you like this little spiel at the end of our last class period and all that stuff, and it's in that video. So last exam is econ. Yeah, for most of you guys, it's either econ or stat. Those are the last two. So once that's done, you're done. Oh yeah, why am I yawning so much? That's so weird. Okay. But other big things today were that your grades for your classes got finalized today. Oh, it's just rolling over in the background. Let me just give you a little better view of what he's doing. Archie, what are you doing? You idiot. No, keep doing it. You're so stupid. Alright. But yeah, it was the, oh my god, my brain's not working properly today. Your grades got finalized today as seniors. Your grades were due for us today at 10. So if you've got missing assignments for your classes, it's too late. But if you're looking for what your grades were, for most of us teachers, we had to put a summative grade in to the grade book that would represent your grade for that quarter. So if you want to just check grade book and see what you got, it's either 100 or 69. So you should probably know which one of those you got for each class. It's basically, if you did your work and you didn't do it like garbage, you should probably get the 100 for the quarter. Now, semester report cards and everything will go out next week, I would assume. Don't hold me to that, I'm not super sure, but I would assume next week. Everything else is fine on that end. God, I'm trying to think of anything. Graduation stuff. Yeah, Dr. Mars put out a video last night on Facebook. I know none of you check Facebook, but I do. And he tweeted it out, and it got emailed out today with a bunch more information about graduation. They started doing those graduation ceremonies yesterday or 2 days ago at Texas Motor Speedway. I think Argyle did theirs. And it looks to be pretty good. You guys are out in the sun a bit. That'll be the only real problem, I think. Outside of that, it should be okay. There does seem to be 6 feet of distance between each chair, and the masks are a thing, and seems to be relatively safe. You get to take a picture of literally crossing the finish line, which is like a whole, symbolism bit, but also it's not the finish line, it's not the end of your life, so I don't know how they're getting that dramatic, but you get to do that, and that's kind of cool. That seems all right. I don't feel safe about it, but it looks cool. If it was a normal graduation, I'd feel pretty cool about it. Your parents are going to be annoying. They're going to be honking their horns. Warning you on that one. But outside of that, it looks okay. If you check out that email if you need more information about graduation. They put that stuff out, so that should help. Okay, do you know the plan? If it storms, we have 80% of storms that day. Ha ha ha, Brandon, I don't know. No, I don't know what happens if it rains. It's a good question. I would assume they have tarps, but I would also assume that that's a good question, Brandon. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It says 80% chance of storms that day. That's hilarious. I have no idea. Meteorologist Brandon in the building. But yeah, no clue, man. I'm not going to be there, so don't know. You'll be getting an email from me this weekend, all of you will, which is like my personalized graduation message to y'all. So apologies that I can't make it to that, but it doesn't feel safe. And also, now that I know that it might be stormy, maybe they have you stay in your cars? I don't know. Not sure how it's going to work on that, but whatever. It shouldn't be long. The nice thing is they have like a time window of like 75 minutes of how long they have to do the ceremony, which is pretty short. Graduation is typically like a 2 hour, 15-minute thing. This is making it 1 hour, 15 minutes. So things are going to kind of fly through, because more than half of that time is going to be spent just calling out names. Like it'll take a good 45 minutes to get through all of your names. That takes the most amount of time. Yeah, they're doing valedictorian and salutatorian speech, but they trimmed the time. It's like 2 or 3 minutes for each of those, as opposed to like 5 minutes is what they're normally given. So they trimmed the amount of time for the speeches. Yeah, they're still letting Matt and Chet speak, so that's still happening. They're still live streaming it too, so I'll watch the live stream and everything. It's just I don't want to be there in person. It doesn't seem, social distancing stuff matters to me quite a bit. Okay, pulling up AP Classroom right now and getting these questions out and ready to go. Any questions, you guys? You get to get there an hour before. That's about how long you'll be able to get there before. You kind of need to get there an hour before. You don't show up like when it starts, because they have to get you guys like in the proper seats and in the proper order, and make sure you get your graduation like name card. You have to go to the school on this Friday, the 22nd, from 10 till 2, I think is the time window, to pick up your like name card for graduation and stuff. So make sure you do that, because you need that for graduation. Let me grab these questions out. FRQs for live stream 519 ADAS Phillips Curve multipliers. There they are. I signed these out, by the way. All the ones we've done in this last 2 weeks, I have assigned on AP Classroom. So if you want to pull them up, there's like 4 questions per each thing, where we can sort of work through it. If you want to work through them again later, you have the ability to. All right, whiteboard, need it. Eraser, got it. The chair is squeaking like freaking crazy. Let's grab these markers. Let's do orange and magenta. No, let's use brown. Wait. Oh, yeah, magenta's fine. Let's use that. We got them. All right. I don't think there's anything else. Everything else that's big is in that video that I sent out earlier. It's like 15 minutes. Usually they do it in like different lines, like alphabetical, where it's like from names A through D are here, and so they trim it quite a bit. Just don't worry. Although the line in that video did seem kind of long, so not sure. Can't guarantee it, but it's the way that I think it's supposed to work. All right, we move this up here, and here we go. Oh, I need to pull up the Epic pen. That's not what I wanted. That's Epic Games Launcher. That is not the right thing. Pen. There it is. There's the pen. Hello, pen. Good friend. Okay. So ready to not use you anymore. All right. So, country's short-run equilibrium with output less than full employment output. Assume an upward sloping aggregate supply curve. You should have assumed that anyway, but hey, it's just telling you that to tell you that. A, using correctly labeled aggregate demand supply graph, show full employment output label as YF and your current equilibrium output with YE and PLE respectively. Mr. McRitchie, why are there more than one thing to label? Real GDP and price level. Graph should look like this, where my current production is at below full employment. This full employment is where my LRES is at. This is YE, this is PLE, great, nothing too crazy so far. Yeah, it's the GTA is free. That's why I have Epic Games Store. Epic Games Store keeps giving me free games, so I might as well have it downloaded. Assume the country's government increases domestic military expenditures. On the graph in part A, show how this change will affect aggregate demand, real output, and price level. Okay. Alright, so increased government spending should lead to an increase in aggregate demand, right? Because government spending is one of the components of aggregate demand. This economy is in a recession and decides to, hey, let's ramp up our spending. Oh, okay, cool, that's a good idea. So we should have this happen. Bing pot. Nothing too crazy so far. Now, it says this, which is kind of interesting. Equilibrium output and price level labels Y2 and PL2 respectively. If you drew it like I drew it, then Y2 is the same as YF. That is totally fine if that were to have happened here. Let's do YF and 2. That's just because on my drawing I ended up making it like getting back to full employment. It's telling you that because it doesn't have to have gotten you back to full employment. It's not required that it gets you back to full employment. It just has to increase AD. It's fine. Okay. Using a clip graph of your short-run Phillips curve, show the effect in the increased military expenditures on the short run, labeling the initial point as A and the new point as B. Okay, so I need my Phillips curve. It only asked for my short-run Phillips curve. That is very nice of them. Unemployment rate, inflation rate. My normal point is point A. My new point is point B. So when I did this AD change, AD increases. If it's a demand increase that I know I have to move along my Phillips curve, but which way do I go? I'll go in the opposite direction that I went on my aggregate supply graph, right? You always mirror it. It's always a reflection. So if AD goes right, Phillips curve will go left, but because I do move to AD, I move along my Phillips curve to the left, which means I go up along my Phillips curve like this. Can you see it? Yes, you can. Like this. Reason being, when I increased aggregate demand like this, what happened to price level? It went up. So inflation rate should go up from A to B. Do I have a higher inflation rate? Yes, because my y-axis is inflation rate. When I do this change on my aggregate demand and supply graph, my GDP goes up, which means the unemployment rate should go down. And that happens here too. So that tracks. That's A, B, and C. And again, your Phillips curve is always a reflection of your aggregate demand and aggregate supply graph. Whatever you do on your Phillips curve, you will move in the opposite direction on your Phillips curve. The difference is if it's a change in AD, you move along that Phillips curve. If you change aggregate supply, you shift the entire Phillips curve. That is the big sticking point. D, this is not tied to today's lesson, but it's it's AP exam week. You should be able to answer all parts of these. Assume that the increased military spending is financed through government borrowing. The government is borrowing more. What'll happen to real interest rate? Well, real interest rate is the price of a loan, right? Right. The government's borrowing more, so they're demanding more loans, right? Right. So what's going to happen to the price of a loan? It's going to go up. For those of you that don't remember, this is the crowding out effect. That's what they're describing here. When the government increases their borrowing to finance their spending, they will start to crowd out the loanable funds market. Because what's happening here is the government is borrowing more, making loans more expensive for everybody, me and you and businesses, making it harder for us to spend. So what will happen to interest rate? It will increase because as the government borrows from the private sector, it's going to start ramping up the price of loans, because either you could say that the demand for loans has risen, or because banks will have less money to loan out, so they'll have to charge more. One of the two. Either one of those would work. And then D says, assume that the economy produces only two goods, military goods and civilian goods. Using a correctly labeled production possibilities curve, show the effect of the increase in military expenditures from Part B, labeling the initial point as C and the new point as D. Okay. So let's say we have military goods and civilian goods. The government increased spending on military stuff, so we should have more military, but the initial point is point C. Where is point C on this production possibilities curve? Is it on the line, or is it inside the curve? We're in a recession, so point C should be on the curve, and point D would be on the curve, depending on if you got to full employment or not with your drawing, and more towards military spending. The big thing here is that point C is inside the curve and that point D is on the curve and more towards wherever you have military spending. It's weird they didn't have consumer and capital goods here, but they used military goods because it was military spending specifically. So they're trying to make sure that you know, hey, we're buying more military goods. It's like, okay, so then we should be producing more on the military side of things. And we should be on the curve now based on my drawings where I said we got back to full employment. If you didn't draw going back to full employment, then D should just be like kind of inside the curve there, but should be fine, nothing too crazy so far. So we've got, again, for this year's AP exam, they wouldn't have you graph it. They would probably just ask you, is your current equilibrium point ahead of, behind, or at full employment? In this case, it'd be to the left, everything I own in a box to the left. Love you, Beyonce. To be clear, this means your current equilibrium is to the left of full employment. This says left, not li, or l, it's left. What happens on my aggregate band graph? Aggregate band goes up. These two both go up. They can just ask what happens to these things as opposed to having you draw it. On your Phillips curve, what happens? You would say that it moves up along your Phillips curve or moves along your Phillips curve to the left. Either way, that's fine. If it asks you to explain it, you would say because it has higher inflation and lower unemployment now. D and E could remain mostly the same. You just have to say what happens is point C and point D, which is point C is a point inside the production possibilities curve and point D is a point on the production possibilities curve more towards military spending. That is sort of your entire thing. Kenneth, what's up? Okay, questions over this one. This one's a little bit all over the place. There is basically an aggregate band supply question, another aggregate band supply question, a Phillips curve question, a crowding out question, and then a production possibilities curve question, all wrapped up into one. I would call this a short FRQ. It's only parts A through E. It's not that many parts. Probably 10 points total here. You've been doubting all the free donuts. What was this? Is it just free donut day at Krispy Kreme? Krispy Kreme over here is closed, right? Am I going crazy? Or was it like a psych thing where they gave out donuts or something? Am I going crazy? I've been working on stuff all morning, so I have no idea. I've been just grading and grinding and prepping things for WAP and for you guys, so. Still on grind o'clock right now. I'll be free on, I can't even say I'll be free on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I've got to make all those graduation videos. And that'll take a minute because I've got like 240 of you. Oh my god, why am I so tired? I've been yawning so much right now. Okay. Next question. Economy in country X is in a recession. Bummer. With real GDP 100 billion below full employment output. So the recessionary gap is $100 billion. They need GDP to be 100 billion more to be at full employment. Draw their short and long run Phillips curves. What the hell? Oh, that's fine. That's not too crazy. So we don't have any numbers to go off of here from like a Phillips curve standpoint, so I'm just going to draw the shapes. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's pretty neat. That's nice of them. It's probably the one closed over here because people never bought it, but that's nice. At 6 a.m. Well, shouts to you guys for getting there early. Okay. So here's my Phillips curve. Now the big thing is, where do I put current equilibrium point A? And that is, I am in a recession right now. A recession means a period of what? Like, well, it means that the economy is doing bad. It's like, okay, cool. Well, like, what does that mean from this graph standpoint? What do we have on here? We've got inflation. We've got unemployment. If you're in a recession, what do you have a lot of? You've got a lot of unemployment. So my current equilibrium point should be on my SRPC, because it always is. It should be at a point where I have higher unemployment than I should. So point A, that point right there, is a recessionary gap visualized on my Phillips curve. Because again, in a recession, you've got pretty high unemployment and pretty low inflation. You ate 14 donuts already, Kenneth. Holy crap. Dog, that's not good. Oh, that's tough. Okay. B, assume the government increases spending by $20 billion to stimulate economic activity. Assume the MPS is 0.25. Calculate the maximum change in real GDP that could occur following the $20 billion increase in government spending. Okay, how to show work on math. Because you've got to show work on math problems. How would I show work on B? So for B, what would I do? First thing, formulas. What formula am I going to use? I'm going to use my multiplier formula, which is change in spending times my multiplier equals the change in GDP. So first things first, I write my formula. Second thing, I plug in numbers. Increases spending by $20 billion. Okay, so it's a $20 billion change in spending times my multiplier. My multiplier is 1 over MPS equals change in GDP. And then I would just write the change in GDP equals 1 over 0.25 class. That is a 4. 20 times 4 is 8. D. So the change in GDP would be $80 billion change in government spending. Now here's the important thing. Does that fix the recessionary gap? No. They need GDP to go up by 100 billion. They get it to go up by 80. So it does not close the recessionary gap. That is important. Because in point C it asks, label the new equilibrium point, point B, as a result of the increase in government spending. This is just like the last one. An increase in government spending should have me move along my Phillips curve and to the left. But it's not going to go just anywhere to the left here. This is my graph. I'm going to the left. But I did not close the recessionary gap, right? I am still in a recession, only of 20 billion now as opposed to 100. But I am still in a recession. So point B should still be behind long-run Phillips curve. I have not caught up to the LRPC yet because I'm not back at full employment yet. I am still in a recession in this problem. That did not fix it yet. So this is the actual graph right now. Current point is still not at full employment yet because we've got an 80 billion increase when we needed a 100. So we're not there yet. D, had the government lowered personal income taxes by 20 billion instead of increasing government spending, would the maximum total change in GDP be greater than, smaller than, or the same as the one calculated in part B? This is always smaller than. A change in taxes will always be less impactful than a change in government spending. Math-wise, that's because your tax multiplier is smaller. Your tax multiplier here would have been 0.75 over 0.25, so 3, which means you would get a $60 billion change in GDP, so not as big. Again, the logic for smaller than is that because people save a portion of their change in taxes, a change in taxes will not be as impactful as a change in government spending will. Okay? So smaller than, it's always smaller than. If you want to use math to prove it, you can. The difference is that it's change in taxes times your tax multiplier. It's going to call it TM for now, equals the change in GDP. This multiplier is 1 over MPS. This one is negative MPC over MPS. Okay, and that's my setup for my math. If I want to show work with math, what I would do for C or for B to show the work is all of this. At delta S times M, 1 over MPS, is delta GDP 20 billion times 1 over 0.25, which is 4, but you probably don't need to worry about that, equals change in GDP, boom, 80 billion. That's not that hard. It's really not. If you're going to handwrite it, that makes it easy. If you're going to type it, you don't have to write delta symbol, just do spending times multiplier equals GDP, that's fine. Don't worry about the delta symbol, it's not the biggest thing in the world when it comes to making sure you did that right. But there's your second FRQ, and this is a multiplier FRQ. It covers both spending and tax multiplier relatively quickly. It also makes you do stuff to your Phillips curve like this. Now, had my answer to B been different, if this was 180 billion as opposed to just 80 billion, that doesn't just get me back to full employment, that actually like overshoots it. So if this was 180 billion, say that they had the change in spending by like 40. It's not the right math, but whatever. 40 instead of 20 billion, then that would be 160 for my change in overall spending. That's more than I needed, so then it would look like this, because I'd overshoot it. If it was the appropriate number being 25, if this had said 25 billion, then you draw this, where B is back at full employment. Okay, does that make sense? That's the tricky part. Is that LRAS is Phillips curve, is the LRPC is your like long run equilibrium. It's full employment. I'm not at full employment with an $80 billion change, right? Because I'm 100 billion below where I'm supposed to be. This gets me close, but not all the way there. Austin, good to see you. I'm assuming that I guess everybody's doing their donut run. I can't imagine Krispy Kreme is going to be okay today. I can't. It's going to be probably hell on earth. I am not going to go to Krispy Kreme today. What if I teach class of 2020? Do they give me anything then? No. Gross. What if I have to grade the work of the class of 2020? Okay. Last two. We got two more FRQs to do. I'm flying through them because I've gotten really good at these and none of you are asking questions because you guys have frankly heard me do them like 30 times now. Okay, assume the economy of country X has an actual unemployment of 7%, a natural rate of unemployment of 5%, and an inflation rate of 3%. Draw our Phillips curves, okay? Again, I'm focusing a little more on Phillips curve here because that, again, I believe is a weaker point for us than our aggregate demand, aggregate supply curves. Food tastes better when it's free. That's true. It's cold hard facts there by Kenneth. Increased donut demand. But either way, it's free, so that's a different thing. So Phillips curve. Where do I put these points? Where do I put these numbers at? Natural rate of unemployment is 5%. That's where LRPC is at. Current unemployment rate is 7%. And current inflation rate is 3%. So this is what I should be looking at. Let me draw the dotted line down there. So this is my country right now. This is my graph right now. It says label short run equilibrium as point B. There we go. This is what my graph should look like. I'm looking at those numbers. Those numbers already tell me something. They tell me my current unemployment is higher than it should be, which means what's going on? Recession. That's it. I know that just from reading this sentence. I don't need anything else than this sentence to tell me this economy is in a recession. Their unemployment rate, their actual unemployment is higher than their natural rate. Our current unemployment rate is worse than what it's supposed to be. Okay, then we are in a recession. Done. Assume the government takes no policy action to reduce it. The government is not going to fix this problem. In the long run, which of the following will each of the following shift to the right, to the left, or remain the same? The question's asking about the short run aggregate supply curve, and to explain it, and the long run Phillips curve. So, the short run aggregate supply curve. What the heck happens there? Well, that's why the recession thing is good to know, because then you know what your aggregate demand aggregate supply graph looks like. Which is this tiny graph I've drawn up in the corner. This is what my aggregate demand supply graph looks like. I am in a recession. What happens in the long run if the government doesn't do anything to SRAS? You guys got to know this. The SRAS will move back to long run equilibrium. In this case, if you're in a recession, that means it'll have to shift to the right. So will it shift to the right, left, or remain the same? It's going to go right. Why? What can businesses do? They're in a recession. They are going to cut wages, comma, hire people, comma, produce more. Done. That is don't just write that, like write that as a sentence, but like that is the explanation. Businesses will cut wages, they can then use that money to hire more people and ramp up their production ability. Boom. SRS goes up. What happens to your long run Phillips curve, guys? Nothing. It's there to throw you off. Did I move my LRAS curve there? I did not. So would I move my LRPC there? Nope. Unless you move LRAS, you don't move LRPC, and this does not move LRAS. Remember then, if my drawing up there had the vertical line moving, then yeah, I would move LRPC, but I don't have to have that happen. So there's my answers for B. And again, if you guys have questions, just throw them in the chat. I'm going to keep moving through these problems, but if you have a question, I'll come back and answer it. It's not a problem for me. I'm not going to wait till the end to answer. I'll answer it in the moment. C, identify a fiscal policy action that can be used to reduce unemployment in the short run. Reduce unemployment is my big thing there. I need to reduce unemployment, which means I need what type of fiscal policy? Expansionary. Very good. Proud of all of you, especially me, for knowing that. Need expansionary. Need an expansionary fiscal policy. What are my expansionary fiscal policies? I could either increase G or lower taxes. One of those two will do it. Boom, that's it. It just says to identify, don't to explain. You just got to answer it. They should increase government spending or they should decrease taxes. That's it. Income tax is generally the best way to answer that, but it doesn't really matter. Correctly labeled graph of your aggregate demand supply curve show the impact based on the fiscal policy. This is just effectively what we did in the last couple. Right? In this case, to be clear, this one is not the same as B. This one is an aggregate demand increase. Lindsay, good to see you. I'm assuming you were also on donut duty after your psych exam. So aggregate demand goes up is your drawing for D. That's it. E based on... Oh, ignore these two. These are out. These questions don't matter anymore. Ha 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 ha. Forex market's gone. Suck it. AP exam's out of here. Woo, get gone. Oh, that last one cut out my dream. Oh. So yeah, there's no Forex market stuff on the AP exam this year, so this wouldn't be here. Rest of it still works though. Rest of it's still good stuff for your AP exam to understand. So again, if I'm drawing my graph for the beginning, for part A, where it's asking me to draw my Phillips curve, this is what my Phillips curve looks like. It says the actual unemployment rate is 7%, natural rate is at 5%, inflation rate is 3%. Okay, so my current point is at 7.3. 7 unemployment, inflation rate's 3, so it's 7.3 is my current coordinate for my point. That's where point B is. My LRPC is drawn to natural rate of unemployment, so that'd be 5%. Done. This economy is in a recession based on this drawing because unemployment is higher than it's supposed to be. Which means what will happen in the long run to SRAS is that SRAS in a recession is going to have to increase over time to get back to full employment equilibrium. Why don't I use the larger pen? Oh, for scratching out this, that's a good point. I'm being dramatic, and it doesn't matter. I'm just being dramatic, so it doesn't really matter. If you're trying to reduce unemployment, you need an expansionary policy. Think, what do you need your economy to do here? You need it to expand. You need your economy to grow so they can hire more people. In expansionary policy, my expansionary fiscal policies are increase government spending or decrease taxes. Done. And if I do those, what would happen on my aggregate demand supply graph? It would increase AD. That's it. And that's the whole question. So we've gone through 3 of the 4 questions already because I am cruising for a bruising in terms of wanting to get through this stuff. Apparently, I'm subconsciously trying to just fly through this because I've done... God, I don't want to think of how many FRQs I've solved on the live stream now. Especially after Saturday. God, my brain. But yeah. God, if only I could take the AP Macro exam. Ugh. I should go back to college and take the AP exam so I can get the college credit for Macro 1. And here's the last one, and I picked a long one because I hate my life or whatever, I'm not sure. I just picked a long one because, like, screw it, let's just go for it. Oh, God. All right. So, this one's also in a recession because they love to use recessionary periods. Honest to God, I keep looking for inflation ones, and there's only like a few, and a lot of them have Forex market stuff, so I can't use them. So again, this is below full employment. Again, this is a recession. So again, if I'm drawing that graph, it looks like this. This should be second nature to you. At this point, with how many FRQs I've done, ask you to draw a recession, it should not be very difficult for you. Full employment output is Y. F. Current output is Y1. Current price level is PL1. Here's my graph. The AD curve's a bit much, but outside of that, everything else is perfectly fine. U.S. government increases spending on goods and services by $100 billion, which is financed by borrowing. Good to know. How will the increase in government spending affect each of the following? Cyclical unemployment and the natural rate of unemployment. Okay. What is cyclical unemployment? Is unemployment caused by recessions? What will this do to that? Well, this should increase AD, right? This should increase aggregate demand. Maybe not by a ton because it's financed by borrowing, so crowding out might limit it, but it should increase aggregate demand, which would close the recessionary gap. If there's less of a recession going on, there should be less cyclical unemployment going on. Now, I am curious as to know what they had as the as one of their answer choices for this. So give me 1 second. I want to double check it because I am actually interested. This is for just this problem? No, it is not. It's for all the problems. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. I want to check something here because I am curious if they had more than one answer for part B too. Because I have an answer that I know will work, but I want to see if they have another one listed. Part B. Cool. Yeah, I'm right. What I said is fine. They didn't have more than one answer. The natural rate of unemployment is where LRPC is drawn at. So does that change here? And if you're thinking, I don't think so, you're correct. It does not change. Why? This is all temporary. This is all short-run stuff, right? This is short-run alleviation. This is a short-run fix to the problem. Does this have a lasting impact in the long run? No, not particularly, because the economy gets back to full employment. Your ideal amount of unemployment shouldn't really change here. This does not make it so that we have more capital. Right? This is government spending, not business spending. This is not on capital. This doesn't make it easier to produce things. This just makes it so we spend more. So this should not really change the natural rate of unemployment. It really shouldn't. If the MPC is 0.75, calculate the maximum. Whenever you see maximum, that is you need to use a multiplier. Hint, change in real GDP that could result from the 100 billion increase in government spending. So again, let me go back. The formula you're using here is, this is a triangle, change in spending times my multiplier equals the change in GDP. My change in spending is 100. My multiplier is 1 over the MPS. The MPC is 0.75. My MPS is therefore 0.25. Means people spend 75% of what they earn, which means they save 25%. 100 times 1 over 0.25. 1 over 0.25 is 4. 100 times 4. 400 billion would be the answer there. Oh, pardon me. So 400 billion is our answer for C, and then for D it says loanable funds market graph. I'm going to draw this one on my board. As I mentioned before, that this is a crowding out problem too. So global funds market graph, this bad boy. Show the effect of the $100 billion increase in government spending on the real interest rate. What they're asking about here is because it's financed by borrowing. Because it specifies this government is borrowing to do this spending. What happens on a global funds market? The government is borrowing more money. That means there is a larger overall demand for loans in this economy. Again, this is the crowding out effect, where the government is borrowing more, which is going to make loans more expensive for everybody else. So if you're going to graph it, you would draw this, an increase in demand. The important thing here is that real interest rate will go up. It's going to make the price of loans more expensive because if the government's borrowing more, they're putting more of a burden on banks to give them money, which is going to make the loans more expensive for everybody else, as banks now have less to lend to everybody else. So based on that change in real interest rate, what is the effect on long-run economic growth rate? Rate, math, doesn't matter. The idea is what happens to your long-run growth if interest rates are higher? Why does that matter? What are interest rates tied to? Investment spending, right? Interest rates and investment spending have an inverse relationship. Remember that one? Well, investment spending is usually on capital, right? Which is stuff that helps us grow. So if real interest rate's higher, that means investment, which again is capital I, but I'm going to write investment, goes down. So capital goes down, because if we don't have as much investment spending, we won't have as much capital, which would lead to a decrease. This is a down arrow that I've drawn at a weird angle to make it look like, I don't know, a check mark or a V. I'm just going to draw a down arrow. Again, that's better. So that's going to go down because due to the increase in real interest rate, investment spending will fall, which will decrease the amount of capital stock in our economy, reducing how much our economy is growing by, as we have less technology than before. It's the basic idea. This last one says, and I'm not going to scroll down for it because I can just tell you what it says. It says, okay, instead of doing government spending, they change taxes. Let me double check this. This is actually worded kind of interesting. Oh, yeah, this is different. Okay. So I'm going to delete this and go down. This is different than the previous one. So assume instead of financing the $100 billion increased government spending by borrowing, so instead of borrowing, they are not borrowing anymore, the government increases taxes by $100 billion. Will this equal increase in spending and taxes? Will real GDP increase, decrease, or remain the same? Okay, there are two multiplier effects happening here. This is tricky. This is a harder question, I think. So we go back to up here. Change in GDP caused by the spending is what? It was 400, right? Billion. This was the change we found up in part C caused by the spending. What they're saying is they also raised taxes by 100 billion to pay through this. What's that going to do to GDP? Remember the formula there is change in taxes times tax multiplier equals the change in GDP. This is going to get me a different answer than 400. And it's trying to see is if both these things happen, what happens to GDP? Does it go up or does it go down? Does it stay the same? Do these offset each other or not? Change in taxes we said was 100 billion. Right? They increased taxes by 100 billion. The tax multiplier is negative MPC over MPS, which is 0.75 over 0.25, which is, in case you can't do the math, this is going to be negative 3. Which means my change in GDP here is negative 300 billion. Remember, they're raising taxes, so raising taxes should hurt GDP. It's going to hurt GDP by 300 billion, but this is going to help GDP by 400 billion. So real GDP is going to increase. because this change in government spending is going to be more impactful than the change in taxes. So when done simultaneously, the change in GDP will have sort of like a surplus, a leftover positive effect. Because if they both happen, then you should see a $100 billion increase in GDP. This is going to reduce how effective this is. It is going to do that. However, it is going to stop the crowding out effect from happening. It is going to prevent this long-run growth thing from happening. Because by paying for it with taxes, you reduce the long-run burden on your economy. You're just actually paying for it with money you actually have. It's like working for a job to pay for something as opposed to taking out a loan to pay for something. When you take out a loan to pay for something, you've got to pay more later, and it's got this whole long-term problem that you've got to deal with. But if you work to pay for a thing, then you just paid for the thing using your work, and there's no long-term burden. You don't have to worry about it. Was it harder in the moment? Sure. But it might be worth it because it'll save you money long-term. That's the basic idea. So that F1 is tricky. That F1 is based on the stuff from the previous thing where we said that when you do a change in taxes as opposed to a change in spending, a change in taxes is going to be less impactful because people save a portion of that money. That's still true here. That still matters. That is still practically accurate. Because of that, if you do both a change in GDP and a change in taxes, then the change in GDP will be more impactful. So if I'm doing change in taxes to pay for the change in GDP, it'll still have a net positive effect. Basically, if the government does this, if they tax $100 billion to spend $100 billion, it'll actually have a net positive effect on the economy rather than canceling each other out. Which is why it's not a bad idea to, if you're going to increase government spending, to raise taxes to pay for it as opposed to borrow. It sort of shows the effectiveness of being fiscally responsible as a government, of having a balanced budget. It can still benefit your economy to have a balanced budget. It's the basic idea. Okay, those are the 4 FRQ problems. I need questions, comments, and concerns at this point over the FRQs that I have covered today. And again, today's FRQs covered mostly aggregate demand and aggregate supply, although frankly all the questions had to do with recessions because they like to ask about that. And almost all of them had a government spending component because, again, they like to ask about that. Those are things that get frequently asked about on AP exams. Had some multiplier stuff here. These are the spending and the tax multipliers, which means MPC and MPS become important. Remember that MPC is your marginal propensity to consume. That is, how out of every dollar you make, how much do you spend? In this case, 75% is what this question's telling me. Your MPS is your marginal propensity to save, saying on average for every dollar you make, how much did you save? In this case, it's 25%. 0.25 is your MPS. Your multiplier here, your spending multiplier, is 1 over MPS. So for when I was doing part D, I did 100, my change in spending, times 1 over 0.25, which is 4. So 100 times 4 is 400 billion. In this case, because it was 100 billion. So that's where I got this 400 billion for down here. I just snagged that from part C because it said I was doing that, but not borrowing to do so. So basically D and E don't happen, which is nice. Because again, this stops from crowding out happening, which is really cool. You'd like for crowding out to not happen. That's very, very good. For change in GDP multiplier, you will always have one value, right? What do you mean? Like you'll either have MPC or MPS. Let me go through all parts of that. If it's a GDP multiplier situation, they will always give you they'll give you 2 of the 3 things in the formula. Or at least enough information to have 2 of the 3 things in the formula. Again, the formula is change in spending times multiplier equals a change in GDP. They're going to give you in the question enough information to know 2 of these variables so that you can solve. In this situation, they gave me the MPC, which means I could find the multiplier because MPC and MPS will add up to equal 1. So I can find that using that. It tells me there's a $100 billion change in government spending, so I know what that is. Now, this doesn't have to be GDP. This could be GDP. It's also sometimes listed as aggregate demand. It's also sometimes listed as income. This is the one thing that kind of gets throw you guys off. If the question asked instead, what is the change in income that could result from this? It's the same formula. It's nothing any different because GDP and income should be the same. Every dollar spent is a dollar earned. They should equal the same thing. Oh, you can't see my formulas. We're realizing that right now. Change in spending times multiplier equals change in GDP, aggregate demand, income. So you're going to have enough to have two of these in the equation. They could ask you something weird. They could say, hey, there was a $40 billion change in spending that resulted in a $160 billion change in GDP. What was the spending, or what was the MPS? In that situation, I had the change in spending and I had the change in GDP. I've got to solve for the multiplier and then solve for the MPS. So if that's the case, if I do that 40, 160, then I know my multiplier is 4. I know that 4 would equal 1 over MPS. So then I would solve for that. Solve for MPS. Not related, but how do you find the price of a market basket? Good question, Austin. It is going to be based on the question in terms of what you're finding, because the market basket will vary country to country, situation to situation. In one of the questions I did, I think it was last week on the practice, they had said that the market basket was the quantities of the good in the base year, which is a general safe bet. The market basket is made up of the quantities of your good given in the base year. So it said that there were like 8 apples and 4 oranges in the base year. That means the market basket has 8 apples, 4 oranges. Find the total price of that. So when you're finding the price of the market basket, that's what you are doing. It'll either be given to you, Austin, or they'll give you some relatively easy way to find it. Let me see if I can find that FRQ real quick. I'll pull that FRQ up because I should have it in my assignments. Because I made that quiz for last week. 514 live stream? Yes! Amazing. Oh, wait, that was it. 3. So for question 3, this is the question that Austin is basically asking about. I don't know if it's one that he's actually asking about, but it's just kind of the same thing. It says, assume the market basket is composed of the quantities for year 1, calculate the CPI for year 2. So that means that there are 10 or 15 apples and 4 oranges in it. The way I find that is I find the price, market basket current year, price, market basket, base year. I mean, I always need to double check that formula because it's the one that I'm very confident that I forget. It is, yeah, okay, it's always over the base year. Why do I always forget? Why does it freak out about that? It's always over the base year. Sorry, I always get nervous with the CPI formula because it's the one that I've done the least often. So current year over base year times 100. The price of it in my current year, which is year 2, of 15 apples and 4 oranges is this. That's how I find it. 6 times 15, 5 times 4. 6 times 15 is 90. 5 times 4 is 20. So this is 110. Because 20 plus 90 is 110. Over what it is in that year, which is this. These are multiplying, by the way. 4 times 15, which is 60. 10 times 4, which is 40. 60. Oh, plus 40 is 100. Cancels. 110 is the answer. So how you do it is going to be based on the question. They will either give it to you or give you something like this to figure it out. Give you some way to find out what the market basket is. It is a price, so it should be something you can find by math. Total price of a market basket. Well, if it's got 15 and 4, then what's the price of 15 apples? Well, that'd be 6 times 15, right? What's the price of 4 oranges? Well, that's 5 times 4 to find the price of it, right? It's the total price in the current year is the total price in the base year. Can double check it, but I'm pretty confident that's the right way to solve it, right? There it is, yeah. 110. Cool. Default with bigger camera. And awesome, that's a great question type to ask, especially on Thursday, right? Like on Thursday when it's part of the AP exam and I'm going live from 10 a.m. to 2:30, I'm just like, ask me whatever the hell you need to. Just throw something like that in the chat. It's like, cool, I'll pull it up, I'll see what I can do to show you how it works and how to figure it out. But that's how you find the price of a market basket in a problem. It's going to be based on the problem. Typically it's the quantities of the good in the base year as a general rule of thumb to go off of. Can't think of anything else. Other announcements, that should be it. I mean, tomorrow we're doing monetary policy, money market, loanable funds market, which done a lot of loanable funds market today, but I'm going to hit the money market stuff pretty hard tomorrow. Monetary policy is pretty hard tomorrow. 4 more FRQs then. And then on Thursday, it's just 10 till 2:30, as long as I can go. Just reviewing, cramming for that exam. It's going to be annoying putting in this much work for a 45-minute test, but you'd rather nail it out of the freaking ballpark than have any problems, any mistakes or concerns. So we're going to do our best to take care of that, make this really easy and doable for you. The more you practice this kind of thing, the better you get at it. Even if it feels repetitive, good. I'd rather it feel repetitive than for you to get thrown off. There's always like a new little nuance in there, something that's going to try and throw you off in these questions. The last part of the last one did that. So be aware of that. Be careful. Read the questions carefully. Are going to go live Friday. Was not planning on it, no. I was not planning on going live on Friday, unless you guys want to do like a last day of school party on the live stream, where it's just me and you guys doing stuff. Madison, what's up? Go for it, Madison. Yeah, live stream on Friday. I wasn't planning on it because I don't think we need to, but if you wanted to, I guess we could do that. So for sure, should we write our answers or type? Up to you. If you're going to write your answers, make sure that when you take pictures using your phone, that your phone saves those pictures and you upload those pictures as JPEGs or as PNG files. If you cannot do that, or if you can't figure out how to do that, then you should type your answers. If you're typing, the only thing you have to kind of worry about for me, the only thing I'd be concerned about when I'm typing is showing my work in math, because you do have to show your work in math problems. I mean, realistically, you can do something like, let me pull it up and I'll just like start typing into a Google Doc. What I would be doing would be something like, okay, if I'm doing the formula I just did, I would just say, and then I plug in my numbers. And if I'm typing my expanding multiplier, I'm doing like 1 over MPS. Like I would just be typing my math instead, which that I hate. I hate doing it. I hate typing math. I've always hated typing math. So I handwrite. You should, no matter what, have scratch paper. You need scratch paper for this exam because that's where you should be drawing all of your graph stuff. Even if you handwrite your answers, I probably wouldn't have my graphs on my answer sheet in case I did them wrong, and then they might reference them. Are they going to ask questions about Keynesian or classical economics? They should not. They have removed Keynesian and classical theory from the AP exam. And, I should say, they've removed it in such that like there used to be graph type questions they could ask regarding Keynesian and classical because there were different graphs you could see for Keynesian and classical. They've removed that. The theory stuff for Keynesian versus classical is possible, I guess, but they've like literally never done that on an FRQ. It's usually just not a worthwhile detour because you kind of already do a bit of it. Like Keynesian is just using government stuff like fiscal policy. You already answer Keynesian questions, just they're not called Keynesian questions, they're just called economics questions. Classical is that long-run self-adjustment. We already do that. So we already kind of show a couple of things that are Keynesian and classical in our graphs. So we tend not to have to actually describe those theories at all. Good question, Austin. They have like literally never thrown it on an FRQ, so I don't see them doing it now. Madison, no worries. Glad to help. I'm trying to think of anything else. Oh my god, my brain. Yeah, I mean, I don't plan on going live on Friday, but because I'm going to be recording, frankly, a friggin' ton of graduation messages. But I guess if you guys want to do like, I don't see the point of doing a live stream party. A Zoom would make more sense, but I still don't like Zoom. It does not feel safe, security-wise. And it feels like having like a graduation, like a last day of school party via Zoom, seems like a recipe for disaster. Not because you guys would do anything bad, but because your peers might. So, probably won't do a thing like that. I'll just do my graduation videos, and that'll probably suffice it. Oh god, my brain. What's up, Arch? Let's give me some dog cam. Bajo, sit. Sit. He's so proud. Majestic. Oh, you are so lucky you can't smell his breath. It's not good. It smells like dog. Archer, sit. Sit more. Bobo. Oh, good boy. Good boy. Use Discord. Super hard no. What is the hardest no I can say to something? Whatever the hardest no I can say to that. No. I'm not doing that. What, do I know how to use Discord super well? Yes. Do I feel safe about it? Even less so. Again, it's less about the platform. It's more about like, hey, can I trust everyone in that Discord to be appropriate? No. There's just no way to police it. And I can still get in trouble as a teacher for hosting something like that. So, I'm good. Sorry, guys. I don't want to lose my job. I care about it. How old is the dog? Archer is 8. Oh, he's got his toy. Baba! Give me it. Like, we call... Why? Oh, yes. The anger. Okay, he's 8 years old. Oh my god, the strength! We call those his nunchucks because there's like bones at the end of them, and he will flail them around like nunchucks and hit you with them if when he's trying to play. He has thrown them at me with his head. He's just like, and it's just like as a flail, and just hit me. I was like, wow, he really wants to play. He's done that before. But yeah, Archer is 8, and he's doing great. His leg's all good, so everything's okay with him, thankfully. No worries about his health. He's all alright. He's getting plenty of exercise. He loves having me here. Although he does just kind of sleep all day. Bajo. He wants to go for a walk. That is what's happening right now. Oh god, you might have heard me say it. He knows what that word means, so he gets really excited whenever I say walk. Archer, do you want to go for a walk? You want to go for a walk? Want to go for a walk? Walk? You want to go for a walk? You want to go? You want to go for a walk? You want to go for a walk? Is that what's going to happen? Okay. He does. Yeah, he absolutely does. All right. See you, everybody. Hope you all have a good one. I'll see you all tomorrow. Peace.